So good that you could join us for yet another edition of the Catholic View for Women, where we share views and news from a truly Catholic perspective. I'm Teresa Tomeo, along with my co-host Astrid Bennett Gutierrez from Hispanics for Life, and of course Janet Morana from the Silent No More Awareness Campaign, as well as Priests for Life. And she is a well-known face and voice on EWTN Radio and TV, with Defending Life, and of course appearing regularly on my program on the radio on Catholic Connection. All right, this topic is really important for what we are facing right now in our culture. We're going to be talking about, on this episode, Catholics and Evangelicals together. More specifically, a beautiful statement, joint statement that they signed, a group of very prominent evangelicals and Catholics, on marriage. The two shall become one, reclaiming marriage. Very important for Catholics and evangelicals to work together on the front lines on this issue.
Well, you know, Teresa, traditionally, you think about it, usually they're arguing theologically, you know, about the true presence or confessions, salvation, you know, the end times, you know, different things theologically that obviously the different denominations disagree with. But this is so beautiful because we're coming together because the attack on marriage is so great. And that, of course, God's way is the right way, as we know, and the teachings are so clear. But to see all the denominations coming together like this, to say, you know what, we've got to stand together to protect marriage as instituted by the God. And this to me was a great encouragement to see that. Because I think if you can come together on one such important issue, then maybe others will
little by little. And this issue, particular marriage, is so fundamental. When you begin to see that crumble, it's like society is crumbling. It's absolutely crucial that we come together. Those of us that profess Christ and the gospel to save not only marriage, but society itself. This is a crucial issue. I don't think that Christians have really thought it through, what's happening as we begin to redefine marriage in different countries.
Did either of you ever think that we would be in this situation where we had Ireland just completely, and they put that vote out, and it was, what was it, 70% in Dublin and 62% majority of the rest of the country. Now Australia moving in the same direction, and we see the attacks all over the place from the top all the way down, and vice versa here in this country, you know, going all the way up to the Supreme Court, this issue. Something as fundamental as marriage. For thousands of years, this has been a bedrock of society. And all of a sudden, nope, it could be anything. You know, and we have what, out east, we had a throuple get married, and also over in Thailand, another throuple, 3 women getting married, 3 men getting married. What's next?
I know. And, you know, ironically, and we covered this on one of our other episodes, we had people from the gay community who are living celibate lives, according to the church's teaching, comment on all this gay marriage. And one of them pointed out that the only person that's getting rich here are the lawyers, because these gay relationships are not working out, these gay marriages. They're in divorce court within 2 years. And I've been seeing the fallout even just, I mean, in my own town even, there was a couple, 2 women, you know, got married, and they had, by in vitro, another topic we covered on this,
and surrogacy
and all this, twins, and now they're split after the babies are born, and now they're arguing over who's going to take which baby and raise these kids separately. I mean, it's going against human nature. It's going against God. And this is really the battle we're in.
And that's actually one of the questions that came up if you read the transcripts and the Supreme Court arguments that took place earlier this year, where they were the attorney representing the gay couples, and it was asked, I think it was by Justice Roberts, well, okay, so you have 2 people. What happens with children if you have 3 people married? How do you divide the children? I mean, it's absolutely unending where this goes. So that's why we brought on our own expert, Dr. Echeverria, who is with Sacred Heart Major Seminary, Dr. Eduardo Echeverria. He is actually a theologian, a professor there, and he signed the statement and worked on it with the other Catholics and Evangelicals. And we caught up with him in Detroit, where he works, and he has a unique perspective because he is also a revert to the faith. He came back to the Catholic Church, so he was on the other side working with evangelicals when he himself was an evangelical. So let's see what he has to say about the two shall become one, reclaiming marriage, Catholics and evangelicals together.
Evangelicals and Catholics together have been around for about 20 years. In fact, they're celebrating their 20th anniversary this year. Over the years, they've worked on various topics. They started out by, expressing a foundation what's the foundation for evangelicals and Catholics? So they decided it was, the Nicene Creed, that we all confess the Nicene Creed, and this was going to be at least a sufficient foundation to get a conversation going so that we could address a variety of topics, everything from the gift of salvation, the gift of life, the call to holiness. There was a statement on religious freedom, a statement on Mary's place in the plan of salvation, and then most recently the statement on marriage. Why now? Because marriage is in crisis, not only because of the homosexualist culture and same-sex marriage and all that, but we live in a culture of divorce, cohabitation, the cultural inroads that the sexual revolution has made, so how that affects sexual morality and the choices that people make, and of course, not the least of which, the impact that homosexualism has had on our culture. So we spent 2 years working on this document, and it came out in March. It was published in the March issue of First Things. When the document, I think, is important because it presents a clear vision. We need clarity. We need a clear vision of what marriage is, what the historic Christian view of marriage is. Christians have been silent on these things. They've accommodated to the culture, or worse, they've been confused about what it is that the historic Christian view is about marriage, or they've tried to change it. Most recently, the Presbyterian Church USA. There are two large Presbyterian denominations in the United States: Presbyterian Church USA and the Presbyterian Church in America, which is the more conservative one. But the Presbyterian USA, they decided they were going to marry, so affirm same-sex marriages and so on. So the culture needs to hear a clear voice on these things. Now, I know some people might think evangelicals and Catholics together, well, this statement on marriage, how can evangelicals and Catholics actually affirm a common statement on marriage since we don't all agree that marriage is a sacrament, or even that since most Protestants, even though they're sort of undergoing a kind of a reconsideration of it, they support contraception, at least in practice. Although in principle, the statement, the ECT statement, rejects the contraceptive mentality. It also rejects the idea that you can just use contraception, not just as a backup for abortion, but that you can use contraception indiscriminately without a sort of a moral framework. So even though Catholics and evangelicals in ACT didn't fully agree on the Church's teaching, Humani Vitae, and the question of marriage being a sacrament, there was a sufficient amount of agreement as to what marriage is. Most crucially, that marriage is the two in one flesh union of a man and a woman. So if you think that there are, when Jesus says in Mark 10 and in Matthew 19, when he refers us, when he's asked about divorce, and he refers us back to Genesis 1:27, God created man in his image, male and female he created him, and Genesis 2:24, therefore a man shall leave his mother and father and cleave unto his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So that's about permanence. Marriage is about permanence. Marriage is also about two-ness, but also marriage is about sexual differentiation, sexual complementarity. That pillar of marriage is in crisis, is in people rejected, because a lot of things follow from that. that children need mothers and fathers, and that's considered narrow-minded, even bigoted on the part of some people. If you went around the Archdiocese of Detroit, let's say, and you asked, you went around, let's say, a dozen parishes, and you asked them questions about what marriage is, what the nature of marriage is, or whether you think 2 men or 2 women can be married, what percentage would actually say yes? In fact, there was a study done on that. I forget the organization that did the study, but however it did, and if we assume that their research was actually legitimate, it seemed like a majority of Catholics actually thought that same-sex marriage was fine. So Dolce and Gabbana. So these guys, yes, they probably were raised Catholic, or even more generally, they probably they understand the importance of having a mother and a father. In fact, they referred to it as, this is a supernatural reality, they said, So somehow reality, despite their own personal lives, despite the culture that they've worked in and had friends in, and they themselves were involved for years, somehow reality still has a grip, a hold on them. So they understand children need mothers and fathers, that having a child should be the fruit of a sexual act, and not of an anonymous sperm or whatever. Children need mothers and fathers. And so, of course, even though that seems so obvious to us, nowadays that's considered a radical statement. Not even radical, not even extreme. It's considered a statement that's out of bounds. You shouldn't be allowed to say things like that. I think the most important thing is that despite their lives and the culture that they've lived in for so long, reality still had a grip on them. And they understand the fundamental truth that children need a mother and a father.
What's so interesting about what he just said, Dr. Echeverria from Sacred Heart Major Seminary in Detroit, and we were chatting on set here during that interview, that story that he mentioned involving Dolce and Gabbana, the 2 very prominent and successful Italian designers who actually were partners at one point, still said, you know what, I'm sorry, but children need a mother and a father, as he said, the reality. But the reaction, as he was mentioning, this is the culture in which we're living, and this is why a statement, Catholic and Evangelicals together, is so important. We're the ones now who are countercultural.
That's right.
And particularly, I would say we've already worked together. We've seen an awesome collaboration in the pro-life movement, with the Protestants and Catholics working together, understanding that this is a tremendous attack on our faith, but particularly the human person who is made in the image of God. But now we're looking at this attack on marriage, which is just ferocious world over. And
ferocious is a great word to use. It is.
Yeah. It's vicious. And why? And I think it's because everything hinges not only on the family, but I would say on the couple. And Cardinal Burke had a great statement. He said, the most powerful force against the evils of the world is the love between a man and a woman in marriage.
Wow.
Marriage. Right. So whenever that's being attacked, we have to really, really observe and then come together and fight for it. And not only when we see an attack on marriage, but I think marriage in general is in crisis. We have to uphold marriage, support couples, but right now when we see this extreme attack, we really have to band together, learn from each other. I love this document. It was so instructive. It
was really well written, and so many prominent Catholics and Evangelicals signed it. But I think also, getting back to your point about why marriage is so under attack, it is because of what it represents. The devil is no dummy, right?
That's right.
What does marriage represent? It's so much more than the way we make it. We don't even understand, and Catholics don't even understand, as Dr. Echeverria was saying, the depth of what marriage represents in terms of who God is and who we are, and that relationship. Marriage is a reflection of the Trinity, and Jesus is the bridegroom and the church is the bride, and we have to look at it from a deeper perspective and not just about feelings and emotions. It goes so much deeper.
That's right.
And that's why it's a bedrock. And by the way, we have to take a break. We're running over, but go ahead and make your point, Janet.
No, I was just going to say that, it's the culture we're living in. And the problem is, too, I think so many families now have someone in their family or a dear friend who is gay. And then a lot of these people are living together. And then now they're seeking marriage instead states where it's legal. And so it looks like it's kind of like, you know, what we have with abortion, Astrid. It's kind of like, well, you're attacking my family member. And that's why, like, when we talk about abortion, but the women who've had abortions, you know, are in your family. It's the same kind of thing. There's so many people out there now who have come out of the closet, who are in gay relationships and wanting to seek a gay marriage, that it makes us look like we're the people who are being unkind. And in fact, that's not the case.
Well, again, we have to help people understand what the church teaches and why, because the church is not asking anything differently of heterosexuals than she is of those with same-sex attraction. We're all called to live chaste lives. And sex, it has its place. God invented it. It's not a bad thing. It's a beautiful thing when it is approached properly and as the beauty between the husband and the wife, male and female, as God ordained marriage. A lot more to talk about, so please stay tuned, and don't forget to visit our website. We've got resources, we've got discussion questions, and there's also a way where you can email us and sign up for our newsletter, which is thecatholicviewforwomen.com. We'll be right back. Thanks so much for joining us on The Catholic View for Women. We are discussing a beautiful document that was signed by both evangelicals and Catholics. It's called Catholics and Evangelicals Together, the Two Shall Become One, Reclaiming Marriage. And we were talking before the break, after we aired the interview with Dr. Echeverria, who signed the document and also worked on constructing the document. He's with Sacred Heart Major Seminary, on how our culture is looking at this issue and the fact that we are now the radicals. I wanted to share two quick stories. My husband, of course, is a deacon in the Archdiocese of Detroit. I've been ordained for almost 3 years, and we have a wonderful pastor who's very loving, but he teaches, boy, he doesn't mince words when it comes to life and marriage. And both of them have been approached by people at our parish, which is a solidly Orthodox parish, and saying, well, Father, you're wrong, or Deacon, you're wrong. Dominic gave a homily earlier this year on marriage. And with, you know, my husband, he is not fire and brimstone. He's very loving, knows the faith, loves the faith, but talks about being true to the church. So he gives this homily, and afterwards a woman approaches him and she said, Deacon Dom, can I talk to you for a minute? And he said, sure. She says, I want to know, do you really believe what you just said up there about marriage? And he said, well, not only do I believe it, but we are called to believe it because it's a church teaching, and I have to preach it. And she goes, well, I'm sorry, I'm just not going to be attending this parish anymore, as if this were news to her, right? And then our pastor, Father Darrell, did something similar. He gave a homily, but then also talked about it after Mass in light of the Supreme Court the Supreme Court action earlier this year. And he had a young person come up to him, college student, who was attending our parish just for the Mass that weekend, was from another local parish, who basically came right out and said, Father, you're wrong, and are you kidding me? And you're wrong, and I'm not going to, and actually argued with him over this. And this, again, is right in the Catholic Church. So we have got so much evangelization to do right here in the pews of the Catholic Church.
There's such little catechesis on this topic. That was the one topic, the one teaching that I had a problem with when I was in my reversion was homosexuality, because you're so, in California especially, you're so surrounded. And I was actually studying in Northern California, and you're surrounded by this. So, and I don't hear what the church teaches. So then I had a real problem with it. But once I found out what the church teaches, it was just my eyes were opened. And now this collaboration between evangelicals and Catholics, I would say that a lot of the arguments that we have for marriage would also be appealing to people who are secular, people who have an interest in the good of society.
Right.
RuthInstitute.org in particular.
Yeah, Dr. Jennifer Roback-Moore, she's excellent.
You're going to see that collaboration playing out not only between Protestants and Catholics, but also seeing how you can bring it out into the marketplace, into the universities, and have appealing arguments for people who really are intellectually honest and really wanting to find the truth. Very compelling. Dr. Jennifer Roback-Moore was actually an economics professor at Yale, so she knows her stuff. She's got all her statistics and all the sociology. So I would go on RuthInstitute.org, find out what the arguments are, share them. And now with social media, you can share the truth, because I would say those people that you just mentioned probably never heard a coherent argument or any kind of teaching. So to have it just thrust at you.
Well, no, and plus the younger generation, especially, not to mention our generation, they have been so desensitized. I mean, it has just been an inoculation of this, starting in if you think about some of the shows in the 70s, that just started to introduce this idea that everything, whatever you do with whomever is fine. And now it's just the characters. And we were chatting during the break about, I was telling you about now the next thing that we're going to be facing, which is really upon us, is the whole transgender thing with Bruce Jenner and now these characters being brought in. So this whole idea of anything goes.
That's right. Well, you have to realize, as you know, I was a public school teacher in New York City for a good 13 years before leaving that to do full-time pro-life work. And all the way back in 1990, I was given a new curriculum called The Children of the Rainbow.
1990?
1990, for first grade. And it was teaching, like, some of the recommended books were Heather Has Two Mommies and all this stuff. I remember reading this new thing going down on a bus with Father Pavone to Washington, and I handed it to Father and I said, Father, look at this. They're telling us that, gay couples should be together and married and have kids, adopt kids and like we said, IVF or whatever. I said, this is horrible. I can't teach this. Well, he got into the pulpit the following Sunday and preached about it. We created a whole storm on Staten Island. And we got the curriculum thrown out, at least for our school district.
You imagine if he did that now, he'd be tarred and feathered.
Exactly. Yeah. But see, what I'm trying to point out, Teresa and Astrid, is that this has been indoctrinated into the school system.
And into the church. Look what happened in San Francisco with Archbishop Cordileone.
Right. Oh, yeah. They tried to tar and feather him, too. Right. You can't say anything negative. And, of course, it's spilling out now. And this is why I think Catholics and Evangelicals coming together is so important, because now it's affecting good Christians who want to stand up and have a business, because there's people ordering wedding cakes.
Well, look what happened with the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Right. I mean, in that family, the pizza the pizza store owner in Indianapolis. But I think we always try to give people resources and ideas about what we can do. We are called to talk about this. We do it in a loving way, as we do on this show. Yes. But we cannot remain silent, because marriage is, as you said, it is the central. I mean, it has been the bedrock of society. We have to know how to talk about these issues, to preach the truth in love. And the example that Dr. Echeverria brought up about Dolce & Gabbana, that's a perfect way to bring it into a secular discussion. Well, wait a minute. You have two of the biggest, most successful designers who are admittedly openly homosexual. They're not partners anymore, but they said, you know what? There are some things that we understand to be true. We may not disagree with everything that the church teaches, but when it comes to family, children deserve a mother and a father.
Well, they drew the line in the sand, at least. Thank God.
Let's mention, because people have to know where to find the church's teaching on same-sex attraction persons, and that would be, I would go on couragerc.org.
Courage
We've mentioned it so many times. Please share that with people, give them hope, because there's so many misconceptions. People should know what the church teaches, because a lot of people could even begin to it'll become appealing to them. Hopefully they'll find Christ in the process.
Yeah. And I always like to think about what Mother Angelica said, in your home, you need holy reminders, right? To keep our focus on God and God's teaching. And I want to remind our viewers about our holy reminder. Our patroness for our show is the Madonna of the Kitchen. And she's now available in a beautiful bronze statue. And she's just a beautiful thing to have in your home, in your kitchen, especially in your dining room. It just keeps our eyes on Mary. And you think about the Holy Family. That is really a good
model. The other thing, too, when you get really frustrated, you just say, Ma, help.
Exactly.
Which I
Mary, please. They're driving me
all
crazy.
the time. Okay, we only have about 2 minutes left.
All right. Of course, in addition to, things like available at the Religious Catalog, the Madonna of the Kitchen, we would like you, as your homework, to read that document, The Two Shall Become One Flesh, Reclaiming Marriage, a statement by evangelicals and Catholics together. And it's available at firstthings.com, and we'll have that link on our website. Of course, go to our website, the Catholic View for Women, to see the discussion questions, sign up for our monthly e-letter. I also want to remind our viewers that we've had several seasons now, and we archive all the old programs.
And we've addressed this topic regarding marriage several times already.
That's right. And we've covered the homosexual issue, and of course you just mentioned courage. So really use that website and of course the discussion questions to really educate. That's the whole purpose of, I think, of the shows.
And the previous shows are available. You can order them on DVD.
That's right, DVD in the Religious Catalog. As all three of us speak from experience, because at one time we disagreed with the church's teaching.
We didn't know.
We didn't understand that.
And
I think, to me, that's what the heart of this series is about, and we're still learning as we go, as we interview these people and we're researching for the shows. It's kind of like a subject in progress. And I think that's what we want our viewers to do likewise, is to go deeper into our faith, and then we can evangelize the members of our family, because really that's what this is about. You know, and people, you know, I get this all the time. People say, "Oh, come on, Janet, you're like the expert." I said, "No, I'm not the expert. I'm an ongoing work in progress. I'm still learning and studying, and all of us are responsible. Each one, reach one, and start with the people in your circle of influence."
Amen. We're out of time, unfortunately. A great discussion, ladies, and went by way too fast. Thanks for watching, and as Janet said, please visit our website at thecatholicviewforwomen.com. I'm Teresa Tomeo, along with Astrid and Janet. Thanks for tuning in, and enjoy The Catholic View. We'll see you next time.